Well, hi there, and welcome to Bella's Vistas. Well, when I was in college, I've been a commercial photographer for, wow, since the 70s. But back in school, the teachers were always telling us, interpret your meter reading. Now, I never exactly knew what that meant. But when I got out on my own, I was shooting a lot of 4x5 film. And it wound up costing $6 to $10 a sheet for that. So if you were going to shoot your right exposure and go up one stop and down a stop, that was a lot of money. And a lot of film holders to load when you're on the road too. I had a stack maybe 4 or 5 feet of film holders that I carried with me in a big box, a trunk sort of thing. And I would have to change the film at various locations on the way. So I went out and I bought this meter here. I knew about the zone system, but for the life of me, I couldn't figure it out. But I saw this meter. It's a 1-degree spot meter. It's a little viewfinder on it right here. You can see the 1-degree spot when you look through it. It's just a little circle in the middle. And then you have a button for a highlight and a button for shadow. And there's an averaging button. Now the averaging button, I never used that very much because you could take 4 or 5 different readings and average them, and that didn't make a lot of sense to me. But the one for shadows, if you're shooting like negative film, you would want to make sure you had enough detail in your shadows. You wouldn't want your shadows to wash out at all. And if you were shooting slide film, you had to watch out for your highlights. So you would push the highlight button and measure, say, the whitest part of a cloud or the whitest part of a dress, or depending what it was, something that was white that you wanted to still maintain detail in. Now you could still record detail brighter than that, but you wouldn't have detail there. So that was really helpful. That simplified the zone system. And I remember coming back from a trip where I was chasing caribou and all kinds of things and shooting 4x5 film. I had a big stack of sheets of film like that. And I brought it into the lab, and the technician came out and said he wanted to meet the guy that shot all that slide film without having to bracket. And I had a lot of really good shots for that. I was shooting 4x5 sheet film and working for Hallmark calendars and things like that way back in the day when you could make good money shooting calendars. That's sort of gone now, but I'd also used this meter here, which was just an ambient meter. It measures incident light, so you boom, you take a reading like that and it measures the light falling on the subject, but that doesn't take into account if the subject is all black or all white. That's something you have to judge for yourself when you're using this type of meter. So then along came digital photography, and probably like everybody else, I just figured it was all automatic. You just point and shoot and you get your picture, and it's pretty much like that. But I set up all my presets. I've got C1, C2, C3, C4 on here. Then there's a manual mode, and if you go into the super control panel on the back of the camera, you can go down here to the metering mode and you can switch there. You have your options of spot meter. Well, you start off with your ESP. That's pretty much where everybody starts. I think there's center weighted, which I remember when the cameras came out with center weighted metering, I thought, wow, that's pretty cool. But I'd be shooting with a Leica, so I would use the 90mm frame on the viewfinder, and that was the area that the Leica clip-on meter would measure. Metrowatt, I think, made it, and that worked pretty well. So, but in this camera, when you're into you have, so like I said, you've got your matrix or your ESP mode, then you've got center weighted, then you've got the next one is spot metering. Now the thing is, if you set it on spot meter, it's going to make, if you point that at a white sheet, it's going to make that white sheet come out gray. If you point it at a black sheet, it's going to come out gray. So that meter makes everything a neutral gray. So if you're photographing a person and it's a Caucasian person, you're going to have to give a little more exposure or they're going to come out gray. And so that's why zone 6 comes from the Ansel Adams and his zone system. Zone 6 was the density of Caucasian skin, and other densities of skin you could possibly just use the meter reading or give a little bit more exposure. If you go to the highlight mode, that's going to be for something really white. So if you've got white clouds in the picture, you still want to have detail in there, you can set it for H and you'll have a proper exposure. The camera will automatically compensate for that. If there's a really dark thing in your subject, like a black bird or a raven or something, you can set that for the shadow reading and it'll work out perfectly. And so basically that's how the metering works. The other thing you have is you've got your plus or minus here. Now I remember I was in Newfoundland, I was at Cape St. Mary's Bird Sanctuary, and there was a photographer there teaching a class. He had half a dozen students there from the States that had come with him to photograph the gannets at Cape St. Mary's, which is one of the foremost bird sanctuaries in North America. I've got some videos on Cape St. Mary's, and I've got some on the puffins at Alliston as well that you might like to watch. Sometimes for those things I'd use the spot meter, but when you're using the spot meter you kind of got to measure and then you got to recompose. So sometimes what worked better for me was to use the matrix metering, and there was one instance where the birds were white, sunlight was hitting the birds, and the background was in shadow, so I had to give it about 2.3 stops plus on the exposure compensation dial, and that works out really well because C2 is my setting that I have for birds sitting. C1 is my setting for birds flying. My C1 setting is 1/25 of a second at 5.6 or f8, depending if I have the 2x on here or not. And then if the background is dark and the bird is white, then I'll give it, say, 1.3 or 1.7 or maybe even 2 stops. You kind of got to take a look at what you're getting and see how it works for you in any given situation. That's one of the first things I'll do when I get set up for a lighting situation. I'll decide whether I want to use matrix metering. Some of my shots of the osprey fishing, I just used matrix metering, and I was shooting at C1, so I get a tremendous, that's a really high rate of fire. That's SH2. You get so many pictures, but you're likely to get the one that you want. And then for that one, I was just using a little bit plus 0.3 exposure, but that's something you have to determine by eye. And when you look at your picture in the camera, you can check your histograms and see where you are. You don't want to run off of the scale on either side, and you want to have it sort of distributed across there. And this is good enough that you can, this is just a picture that I shot of a photograph on my wall, but there you can see with the histogram. So by using the different metering modes and the histogram, you can see how it works. One photographer in England, he says you should only use one type of metering so that you can get used to it and know what's going to happen, because you kind of got to know what's going to happen if you're photographing birds. Sometimes they seem to hang around forever, but sometimes they're here and gone, and it's catch as catch can. And the shots you miss are, well, they're gone forever. Another thing I found is that I like using the 2X adapter on here, so it gives me like a 600 millimeter reach, but well, which is 1200 when you compare it to a 35 millimeter camera. But that's hard to keep something in the field. I can use the red dot sight for that too, but it's still hard to keep things in sight and hard to follow action. And also the camera is a little bit slower to focus, and you need 2 stops more light, so that really hurts. So sometimes you might be better off to just, you know, bite the bullet, widen out a little bit, and have a better chance of getting the shot than getting a nice, tight, sharp shot of nothing at all. You know, that's not much good either. So there's always compromises. So anyway, thanks for watching this video. If it's helpful at all, let me know. If there's anything else you want me to talk about in the future, let me know and I'll try and work on that. So thanks very much for visiting Bella's Vistas. Come on back again real soon. Thanks.